Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Sprint 2. Congratulations on finishing the first week. And now I'm going to tell you about what we're going to be covering this sprint. The name of the game in this sprint is HTML and CSS. So for those of you who don't know, HTML and CSS are kind of two of the three main tools that we use when we're developing websites and projects in web development, basically. And HTML is kind of the content. You can think about it as the content. So if you were to imagine, let me get something for example. Okay, so let's say this notepad I have right here, right? So you can see all these words. This is kind of the representation of HTML. HTML is the content of what's on this page. Now, if you look at, see how there's kind of like some little wee pictures here? Those would also be represented in HTML. But the spacing, so the fact that for each one of these little paragraphs that I have here, there's kind of like a little bit of margin between them all, that's where CSS kind of comes in. And you see this is my handwriting. Let's imagine it's a font. The font that we're using here, that is also dictated by CSS. So CSS is kind of responsible for the styling. One of the C's in CSS stands for styling. It's a cascading styling sheet. And HTML is instructs the CSS what it is that it's going to display, and then the CSS instructs the HTML how it's going to be displayed. So we're also going to dive into this idea of the DOM, which is something that I'm not going to talk about here, but we'll cover in depth in the curriculum content for this week. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk a little bit about the core content for this week, and specifically what it feels like to be frustrated. So the thing about learning new information like this, trying to get all of this new information into your brain, especially if it's stuff that you haven't had any experience with before, is that is difficult. Learning this stuff is difficult. There are going to be periods of time where you feel anxious, where you feel really frustrated, like you're not understanding it fast enough, or like the ideas aren't kind of catching in your mind. And that is fine. That is totally fine. That's part of the process. And there are a few tools you can use to sort of alleviate that frustration, right? So it's always going to be there. You're always going to have periods of time where you're not understanding a concept or you're struggling to get something working. And frustration is always going to be a little part of that. But there are a few techniques that you can use to sort of try and avoid some of that unnecessary frustration or not encounter it so much. And the number one suggestion that I have would be take time away from your screen. So when I'm working, I use a Pomodoro timer, which is, you might have seen kind of references to it already in some of our content that we had in the prep material. Basically, it's this idea that you set a timer for an amount of time. The traditional Pomodoro timer is 25 minutes, but I use a 30-minute timer. And then it goes off every 30 minutes and tells you to take a break. And you can do whatever you want on that break. I do push-ups and I get another cup of tea and I urinate. That is, that's my Pomodoro break. And then I come back, and even just taking that little time away from the screen, that little kind of break for yourself away from the problem and sort of whatever it is that you're stuck in at the time, can make a really big difference in your ability to kind of keep going with the work and not get so frustrated. And then another part of not getting frustrated is, like, if you get stuck on something for too long, if you find that you've been working on the same problem for ages and ages and you're not making any progress and you feel like you're just kind of like grinding up against it, then don't do that. Don't spend more than, kind of 20-30 minutes stuck on a problem without reaching out into one of the channels that you have available for help. So those channels would be posting about your problem in the Foundations channel, posting about your problems in the Code Desk Help channel, or reaching out to your facilitator, whoever that might be, and asking them for some guidance. So that is the basic outline for the material that we're going to be covering this week. And whenever you're ready, you can head along to the live workshop video, and I will be diving in a little more deeply into HTML and CSS and helping you kind of understand how those things fit together. So yeah, get to it. Thank you. Goodbye.